I think he takes it personal when he sees white boys guarding him. That's just another thing I think I see with him too. I think that's like he wants to be the white boy. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Do you have any response to that?
Myles. Yeah. I mean, that's classic Myles. That's really all I got for you on that one.
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. Pacers rise to the occasion on Sunday in what was surely the biggest game of the season, and they avoid the letdown that would have been all too fitting in Toronto. TJ McConnell is the white boy in the league, according to Myles Turner. And what more can you say about the recent play of Obi Toppin? We'll preview playoff scenarios, a critical game in Cleveland on Friday, and who's our best matchup in round one. It's all coming at you right here on the Pacers Post Up. All right, Pacers fans, we are back here for yet another episode of the Pacers Post Up. Ryan and I took a little bit of a hiatus, spring break, if you will. I was out of the country for a wedding. Congrats to Summer and Ricky if you listen to this. Ryan was on spring break with the family in Hilton Head, so took a little bit of time off on the episodes there, but we want to pick back up here. Obviously, a lot going on as we come down to the final stretch of the season. Where we really want to pick up is with the Heat game and what was sort of dubbed as really the game of the year, and the most pivotal game, one that I think had some playoff feel, and we can talk about that. I don't know if it, frankly, the Boston in-season tournament game probably felt a little more atmosphere-wise, playoff-ish, and that may be just because of the nature of the game, but we'll touch on Heat Magic here and kind of talk through what we saw and maybe what we can expect to see in the final two games against Cleveland and Atlanta. We're going to touch on some unsung heroes. The play has been too good not to. And then we'll kind of round out with some playoff scenarios here. So we're going to try and get through in about a half hour or so with this episode, cut some of the episode listening time down. Hopefully that's something that's well received by the listening audience here. But Ryan, we're in the building. We'll tee up the game here real quick. The Miami game, obviously coming into the game, the series was 1-1. We had a split where we had played them down in Miami and won the second, actually without Tyrese Halliburton, ironically enough. So big game from a head-to-head matchup standpoint. I think going into the contest, we'll be up a half a game.
Yeah, it was a half a game because we didn't have the same number of games played yet. But It was definitely, I think this term is overused in sports right now, a must-win game. But this was that in terms of, if you lose this, you're likely in the play-in game. I think the odds going into that game were, if we won, we had an 80% to stay out of it, and if we'd lost, there was an 20% chance of staying out of it. But
and that's and the way that it's played out, if the Heat lose tonight, the lowest we could finish would be 7th. We would be locked into a better record than the Heat because we own the head-to-head now. So it was a huge game, and frankly, I was extremely impressed by our effort and energy to start that game and really sustain through the majority of the game. Obviously, there was a point, I can't remember what our largest lead was. I think it was 20. We go into half up 17 after an Adebayo late three. But it was one of those games where I think you and I were looking at each other. It always felt like Miami was going to make that run. Jimmy Butler is known for that. Frankly, we're kind of known for giving up a little bit of that. And so it was just one of those games where I always felt like it was going to come down to the wire, and it did. Some crazy shots, some officiating and things. I guess, from what you saw on, what was it, Sunday now? What is your biggest take? I mean, did we take anything away from that game, or is it just we got the win, we needed the win, and now we got to move on to the next game?
I think there's definitely a lot to take away from this game. From a couple player standpoints, you hinted at it, we started well in this game, which was huge to get out on that early run, that first quarter, and early in the second, especially when TJ came in, obviously, and we're going to hit on that. It's one of those that's really nice because I'm with you that it didn't have quite the atmosphere that maybe that Boston game did before or during the in-season tournament game, but the building was still lively, and each team knew going in what the implications for this game were. And you could even tell at halftime, Spoelstra obviously got his team and made his adjustments and came out, and they were locked in defensively. You knew they were going to start hitting shots. I think at halftime they were shooting like 12.5% from deep.
Oh, they couldn't make anything. Yeah.
And so you knew that was going to turn a little bit, and Hero had some hero ball late that really did help that. But I think it was great. The energy was there. We matched up well, and that was really the key. Turner's first half, obviously, and just entire game in general was incredible. It's probably the best he's ever played against Bam.
Well, you and I talked about it before the game, and that was a matchup that has always been challenging. And I actually remember saying to you, I was like, do you think they put Siakam on Adebayo because he's presented that challenge to Myles? And I thought Myles just rose to the occasion.
He definitely did, and I would say, I mean, he outplayed him. I'd have to look at, you could look at the numbers and see. I know Bam ended up getting his towards the end of the game, and he had a couple threes and still made his play. I mean, that's why he's
an all-star.
He started this year as the all-star team, but for Myles to go in with a game like that and a chip on his shoulder where the matchup isn't great. He played with confidence. He had 10 or 11 rebounds at half. He had a double-double going into half. He played really well, and that's one thing with Myles we've seen is just his confidence level has risen.
Yeah.
And you can see that now when he's taking shots. I don't remember the last three he hesitated on.
Right.
Whereas years before, we would see him, he'd miss one, he'd get the next look. Now he's going straight into his shot. So that looked great. And then I think we have to touch on TJ because it was clear he came into the game. Let's see what he finished with that game. He finished with 22 in this game.
5 assists,
His energy, he's unguardable right now. It's kind of crazy to say, but he can get to his spots. It doesn't matter who you're putting on him. Myles had his, the hilarious quote that TJ could barely respond to about being, hating it when he's got other white boys on him. But
if you haven't, that's just unbelievable.
That's a clip worth looking at if you haven't heard it. And it's actually even funnier, TJ's response, because he had no idea because he didn't hear it, obviously, before. And then
I may put it on the episode intro. It was awesome.
It was great. So there was a lot to like in that game. Tyrese, still did his things. I liked late. Our execution was really well, too. In terms of, I think we scored like 9 points on our last, 4 possessions or something, or 3 possessions.
And we hit free throws.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. Neesmith knocked down all 3 of his. Turner knocked down his 2, and Siakam hit his 1 as well, which it's really nice when you have, those aren't our best free throw shooters per se, especially Siakam, but when you've got a big guy who can come in, you're 2 big guys and knock them down. And if you were in the building, we needed all of those. There was no question.
It was, you said hero ball, and it wasn't just Tyler Hero. I mean, and this is to be expected. Jimmy Butler was extremely aggressive in the second half. The margin kept kind of teetering. They obviously came out. They made the run. In the fourth quarter, we still, I don't know what our largest margin was, but it was probably close to 10 in the fourth quarter. Maybe it was 9 or 7 or something like that. But it just kept feeling like they were coming and coming. And then late, you had a Jovic 3 that was wild.
Which we still say, and there's an argument because people say Rick saved his challenge for the right moment, where I actually disagree with that philosophy. The Jovic one you have to go after so you're not in the position the next one down the line. So I thought, I didn't actually rewatch that play live. It didn't look, and the reviews we got, which if you were in the building, the reviews they were showing us, the angles were horrendous. You could never tell what was going on.
The camera work, no offense to the Gamebridge staff, but it was, it was not discernible at all from the video on the Jumbotron. And we had a couple of those situations. There was another one, because that was the foul. Jovic had another one in the corner that he hit. All of them late shot clock. Our defense really was strong, I felt like, down the stretch, forcing difficult shots. They just hit some. And and then you get the ticky-tack touch foul, whatever. I mean, they reviewed it, Pascal's hands on Hero's hip, but it was one of those things that it's a game where the Pacers led by 20 at one point. Their lead kept getting eroded. You could have seen us fold up and say, and become prisoner of that moment. The spotlight's too big, what have you. And you hit the nail on the head. The execution down the stretch was really strong. And I felt like we did enough to win that game. We didn't lead wire to wire. I think Miami was up like 5-3 at one point, but we really controlled the entire pace of the game. And so it was just good to see us pull it out. That's a game that maybe goes another way if it's on the road. And we can talk about playoff scenarios and the importance and frankly, we still have a realistic shot at getting a home court, advantage, but we'll touch on that in a minute. I just thought it was a game where you had to step up, and we did. A team that has given us some issues, a coach in Spoelstra that I have a ton of respect for, and you knew they were going to come out in the second half. So that was all. I think that was all really positive. And frankly, TJ, again, like you said, TJ has been unstoppable. It's remarkable what he is doing right now. And I don't know if did you see the LeBron comment on the JJ Redick podcast
with Draymond?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I did watch that, and we hate LeBron, obviously, and he didn't actually say it. It was somebody else in the room. It wasn't JJ, and I was only listening to it, said he's like a Draymond Green, and then LeBron elaborated on it.
Well, the part that got me was LeBron saying, this is one of my favorite players in the league right now. And it's like, well, no shit. He's as hot as anybody in the league. So I just get tired of LeBron always on the back of whatever the trend is, whatever is who's ever playing well, whatever. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe I got it out for LeBron.
He needs to focus up. He's matched up right now in a Warriors game in the play-in. Could easily be bounced, not even in the first. They'll have to win 2.
Yeah, and they've had to win a lot of games just to get to this point. But that's here nor there. I think, we want to touch briefly on Toronto, which was last night. I'm not going to try and explain what these first quarter lulls are all about. I don't get it because we had a good start against Miami. We've had good starts this year. I don't know if it's a mindset thing. I don't know if we're too passive, guys deferring and not, Tyrese is a pass first guy. We don't have a lot of what I would call selfish players, or I'm going to get my own.
Yep.
So I don't know what happened at the start of the game besides Freeman Liberty looked like an all-star. Just unbelievable. But
yeah, and some of that you want to say is on coaching, but this game you could even hear the players say it clearly wasn't because Rick almost knew this was coming somehow.
Yeah.
If you look at how he phrased the game and the players, he had a couple early timeouts and was clearly frustrated with the energy and effort, and that's part of it. And I hate using those two words a lot because these guys are going full speed all the time and bringing it, but there is something to this team, and I do think it probably starts with Tyrese a bit, and you saw this. He didn't take his first 2 shots until he had checked out and then checked back in and then hit his 2 threes, and then he got going, obviously, clearly, and had a great night, but
He did that a couple weeks ago in the Nets game where he had 1 shot in the first half.
Yeah.
And again, he had I think he had 8 or 9 assists in that game in the first half. So he's affecting the game in other ways. But I think some of it too, Ryan, it's the nature of the NBA. Teams get on runs. It goes back and forth. How many games have we seen where we've been down or up double digits only to go down or up double digits, 20-point swings. So the bottom line is you don't want to dig yourself too deep of a hole, particularly as you get into some of these more challenging, quote-unquote, meaningful games. While they're all meaningful, there are times where you dig the hole too deep to start the game, and Rick's talked about that. But it's just something to keep an eye on. I mean, a lot of this is you are who you are at this point. I mean, there was so much talk on Twitter after the Heat game, like, hey, wouldn't it just be so classic Pacers to drop this Toronto game right after winning the biggest game of the year? And thankfully we didn't do that. I thought, and I know we want to touch on a couple of these guys, I thought it was Obi's best game of the season on both ends of the floor. He had some big blocks. He hit some huge threes. I think he had 6 or 7 dunks, a couple of them highlight-type dunks. I have just been so impressed with his ability to make an impact regardless of how he's utilized on this team. So I think we just have to touch on, I don't know. Where are you? I mean, Obi, we've talked about it. He's got to be on the team next year, right? I mean,
the only concern now is if somebody else in the league is watching this and is willing to make him, an offer to be a starter like we did at the beginning of this year, or, we're going to be in a tighter money situation. There's definitely, I still think, the funds to bring him back.
Yeah.
But if somebody gets, excited and wants to throw a little extra with these young teams where he can still build, but if there's any way to keep him, the good news is with his contract, any contract he's offered, we can match and keep him.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
He's still on his rookie deal, so that's, So when he goes into it, it's next year, whatever deals he's given, we can match. And then I think you have to try to find a way. He fits so well with what we want to do. He runs with the starters a lot now. When we pull Siakam early, he gets to run with the starters. Him and Tyrese clearly have a lot of synergy.
Small ball 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which we haven't seen a lot of this year, but he actually did that a lot in New York, and that was really where he thrived the most. Now, we're kind of at a logjam with bigs anyway in that sense, so it doesn't make sense with the current construction, I guess, but his ability to finish around the rim, his shot shooting 41% from deep.
I was just going to say.
It is smooth every time he gets into it.
I watched last night, and I don't know if we have worked on his technique or his rhythm or flow, but this is just a sidebar, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but we have a personal connection to the shooting coach for the Miami Heat, Rob Fodor, and I got a chance to meet him before the game on Saturday, and we were talking about some of the best shooters he's worked with. And our stepdad asked him a question. He said, what is a trait of a great shooter? And he said, it's velocity or movement through the entire shooting process, keeping the ball moving through the flow of the shot. And I watched Obi last night. He is doing that, and it looks effortless. He's expecting the ball to go in. Everybody on the team is expecting the ball to go in. And that's not, I mean, he's shooting 41%, 10 points a game, 4 rebounds. He didn't start the year there. His trajectory on that 3-point percentage has gone way up over the back half of the season. It's huge. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And I'm not saying he's, a total movement shooter, but he does go around. He's moving. He can get anywhere on the floor. And he's even now, because that shot has become such a threat, the pump fake, or even he's got this move if he's coming around the top of the perimeter where he'll look to almost fake dish it, and then he drives hard. And we all know his finishing abilities there because all he has to do is jump, and he's right there at the rim.
Yep.
And
he had 2 of them last night. You talk about that pump fake. He had 2 up on the left wing where he got him on the head fake. One of them was an absolute posterizing jam. And then he had a play in that Heat game that was a little backdoor pass to TJ McConnell for a reverse layup. The maturation, frankly, is exactly what we wanted to see, and it's why we took the flyer on him. I didn't mean to do that. It's why we took the flyer on him this offseason, because we gave up, 2 second rounders or something? I mean, it was nothing. I just have been so impressed, and frankly, with Mathurin being out, Jarris Walker not really playing a lot this year, we've needed what he brings: athleticism, transition game. His defense is still okay, but he had a couple of blocks last night, and I just could not be happier with where his game is at, particularly at this critical stage of the season. And he and McConnell are playing phenomenal together. I was watching highlights from the last 2 games just before we jumped on here, and a number of them were TJ and Obi connections.
And that's where you hit it, at least with these slow starts that we are plagued with. I mean, that's where I was calling 5 minutes into the game, get TJ in.
Yeah.
Because he comes in, we know it. If you listen to any Pacers media, we're not breaking news here. TJ's energy, especially since Mathurin went down, there was a clear need for scoring, just in general, not off the bench, but you're losing 16 points a game. And TJ, I think, so Mathurin went down on March 9th, has been averaging like 14 points a game on 50% shooting, 50% from deep, 3J. And he's just been incredible, his energy, and you have been posting a lot about his 6th man of the year and not being there, and that's just because Vegas doesn't really know what to do with those lines a lot because they're not, over-unders and point spreads, so they're really just looking to draw money in, and they probably don't see any value. But I would be shocked if you listened to the last podcast when we talked about All NBA and how these voting works. These media guys will give him votes. He won't win, but he will get votes.
Well, I hope so. And it's funny you bring that up because I looked at it again today, and Malik Monk is the odds on. He's minus 150.
Yep.
And I don't know what that voting panel is looking at criteria-wise or how that process works, but Pacers have the number one scoring bench in the league. It's led by TJ McConnell. We have the best shooting percentage, field goal percentage, I should say, in the league. And TJ's per 36 minutes splits 20 points, 11 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 steals. 55.5% from the field, 38.5% from deep. That's on the season. They're no better than Monk's. Monk's 21-7 for a steal, shooting 44 and 35 from 3. I know that Monk is playing 26 minutes a game and TJ's averaging like 17. So he is having a more of an impact just by his longevity on the floor. But I don't know how you could argue anybody is having more of an impact. You just watch the game. It's just so obvious when he comes in, he scores almost immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, he can get to his spots, and it's for a 6'1", 6'2" guard. He elevates quickly. We've talked about it a million times. It's just he's carved out a niche. And again, this is a guy that was third string to start the year. I just couldn't be more impressed with him and the locker room's acknowledging it. Everybody on the team loves to play with them. It's a pretty cool thing to see. And frankly, if we're going to do anything in the playoffs, we're going to need it.
Yeah.
We're going to need it from TJ, and hopefully we'll be able to get some of that. But anything else on that? Because I know we got to touch on some playoff scenarios, where things stand, seeding, et cetera. Are we good to kind of roll into that?
I think we go right into that for sure.
So here's kind of what I pulled. It's a little bit misleading, I guess, to look at the current standings and games and things like that because not everybody's played the same amount of games, right? So I pulled, Ryan, 2 through 8 in the East, and those are really all up for grabs.
They're still open, for sure.
Which is wild, really, because there's so many scenarios matchup-wise. There's only a few teams that I don't think we could play out of these, 7, if you will. Obviously, we'll touch on just real briefly here. Did you see the Giannis thing live?
I did, and obviously when you get those no-contact injuries, it scares you. I, in the moment, did think it was an Achilles injury. It
looked like it. Yeah.
And the way he grabbed, it's just one of those. Luckily, it was just a calf strain, and he's looking to 1 to 2 weeks, depending. So I hope he gets healthy. I want Giannis in the playoffs. He's the best player in the East, in my opinion. I know Embiid's had a crazy year, but he's still a dominant. And if something happens where we play him, it'd be fun to play him at full force.
For sure. You want Giannis on the floor. He's one of the faces of the league. He's a fun player to watch. We don't like the Bucks, obviously. I mean, whatever. But you never want to get the matchup at less than full strength because it's there. I
want to take the game ball from him. I don't want him off the court.
Yeah, well said. So we'll start with the Bucks. Bucks max wins are 51. They have the highest of anybody 2 through 8. They have 3 games left. It's actually tonight against Orlando, on the road Friday in Oklahoma City. Or no, that may be home. I can't remember if it's on the road or home, but they have Thunder on Friday and then Magic on Sunday. So that's going to be an interesting one to pay attention to because the Magic are currently in 4th. Their max wins are 49. Giannis presumably will not play either of those games. And the Magic's other opponent is the 76ers. So they have the Bucks, the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Magic all have, actually, and the Heat, all have 3 games remaining, where us and the Sixers only have 2 games remaining. So as far as max wins, we're the only team that our max is 48. Magic can get to 49, Cavs can get to 49, Knicks can get to 50, Sixers can get to 47, and Heat can get to 47. The Sixers have to play the Magic. We obviously are playing the Cavs. It'll be really interesting because if the Magic happen to lose to the Bucks tonight, we will have the same record as them. They will own the tiebreak, obviously. If the Cavs lose tonight, they're playing the Grizzlies, which obviously is the Grizzlies, but the Cavs are banged up too. We would actually have the exact same record as the Cavs and current head-to-head. So if the Cavs were to lose tonight, we would move into the 5th seed. It really doesn't matter until Friday.
Yep.
So we're in another game where if there's just so many different ways that this can go, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We can get to 48 wins. If we win both of those, we do lock up the 6th seed. The max that, that, like I said, that the Sixers and the Heat can get are 47. So we control our own destiny, which is a great spot to be. But I guess I'm curious, out of all of these teams and understanding the fluidity here, Ryan, where do you think we land? Where do you want to land from a matchup perspective? And how do you think we're going to, match up against Cleveland, I guess, on Friday?
I will say, I guess, where do I think we land? I would say I do think we're probably going to find ourselves in that 6th seed the way this works out. The Cavs game will really decide that, because if you win that, then you're looking at you pass them and they drop. So anywhere in there, it's crazy that the 2 seed is still in theory in play for us. But that would have to, with Giannis out, you never know.
Yeah.
It'll be good. If you can get home court, that would be, a huge success. If you would have told me, at this time at the end of the season or this time at the beginning of the season that we would have home court advantage or be right here within a couple of games of it, I would have said that's a huge success for this season.
For sure.
We still, the one thing is the Sixers are climbing on us, so don't get too comfortable.
They've won 5 or 6 in a row.
Embiid's back.
Yeah.
And he rested one game on a back-to-back, but now he's going to play every game. They escaped a Wemby game. I was watching that one, unfortunately.
It was like an overtime.
I think it was a double overtime game.
Yep.
And the Hawks actually did that with the Heat last night, although the Heat have kind of fallen a little bit behind us. So, I don't know. I'll phrase it back to you, Brad. Which of these matchups, which would be your favorite to watch?
Yeah, going into this, before some of the Giannis stuff, I would have said the Knicks. And the reason being, there's so much history between the franchises. I think there's some really cool stylistic, it's a totally opposite style of play that the Knicks are trying to play.
Defense first,
more half court. Not that they can't run a little bit, they can, but they're trying to slow the game down and we're trying to speed the game up. And then you kind of take it to that next level where you've got Brunson and Halliburton, 2 guys that are probably competing for all-NBA spots this year. I would say Tyrese had the advantage in the first half of the year. Brunson has certainly played better in the latter half of the year. So if you want to look at momentum there, I think both of them make their way onto the all-NBA rosters. Where that happens, I don't know. Obviously, OG, Siakam, there's kind of a storyline there. I think those games would be fun. I think it would be a hard series. I don't think it necessarily would be the easiest matchup. And then, if not that, if somehow, maybe New York slides into the 2, which is very realistic, I would love a Bucks matchup with all the history that we had this season, frankly, and not only from it's not just because we've won 4 of the 5 games. There's a lot of bad blood there, I guess you could say, which always fuels what for a fan is a fun series. So I would love to see that. I don't, the way the games break out, I don't think we can really match up unless we just go on a run and some of these, Cavs, Magic, Knicks lose games. I don't see us matching up in the first round with 76ers or the Heat. The beauty of getting into a potential 3-6 versus 4-5 is the second round matchup, right? So, if we can't get the 3, would you rather have the 6 than the 4 or the 5? Because that means if you win your series, you're playing Boston in the second round. So that's something that, listen, we got to get in. I don't want to be picky, but I don't know. How do you feel about where we're shaking up matchup-wise, and what do you want to see?
I think you hit it with New York. The Tyrese Brunson would be my favorite storyline. These guys just keep getting compared for some reason. It started with Wally Zerbiak and it's because they're both great. And Brunson has been
Team USA.
It has been incredible. The Bucks one I think would be a lot of fun because if you're a Bucks fan, outside of matching up with maybe the Heat, just because the Heat are always so dangerous in the playoffs, they would kind of be, if you remember when we were the 1 seed a couple years or a long time ago, I think it was 2013. 2013. When we matched up with the Hawks, it was just like, oh, this is the worst matchup we could, because they always cooked us. They had the right. which is I think what we would be to the Bucks this year, because
Yeah.
we've had their number all season. They clearly are frustrated with us. We match up even better now with Siakam, with one more guy to throw on Giannis. So I think we'd have a little fun with that one. I will say in this, Orlando's had our number, but they're clearly the youngest team.
Yeah.
So if you can get that inexperience, you get Rick, who's got the playoff experience, maybe that one is the one you're the most comfortable in. And they also don't have that. I think Paolo's going to become this, but if you look down the list with Giannis, Brunson, and Mitchell is incredible in the playoffs always. That one's where the star power for the Magic, you think you can win. I hadn't even really thought about the 4-5 and the 3-6. I will say this, if it's between the 5 and 6, I'd rather be the 6, depending on the matchup.
Yep.
If you can get the 4, I think the home court, because winning one series would be a huge success this year.
There's no doubt. I agree with you. I think you win both of these games and you just let it play out how it plays. You're not no chance I'm suggesting that you try and tinker there. It's just something to look at. I do think you hit the nail on the head for me. Frankly, as bad as we played against Orlando to start this season, and as poor as the matchup looked for us, I was really encouraged by what I saw in our last game in Orlando. I agree with you 100%. And I think they're talented. Paulo, Franz, whatever. I like that matchup the best for us. We have the star power advantage over them. And frankly, we're not the same team that dropped those first 2 games. Pascal Siakam gives us a totally different dynamic. It allows us to play a little bit longer. We're seeing Ben Shepherd more in the rotation, and he's a guy that could, again, I think gives you something with some of those larger wings, where maybe that was a tougher matchup for Buddy or Matherin early in the season. And I'm not suggesting that Shepherd's a better player than those guys. It's just playoffs come down to matchups and coaching. So
we're bigger now. We play bigger. Siakam would help with the size, and that's what really gave us trouble. But they're a little bit with New York, where they're a defensive first team. You know, with Suggs, Isaac coming off the bench is probably the best player defensively off the bench in the league. So they'd all be fun. And you hit it where we're not getting picky. This is stay 6 and above, and I'll be happy with any of these matchups. And I'll have confidence we have a chance to beat any of them.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think it's going to be really interesting to pay attention to. Again, we control our own destiny here. Just looking at the way this shakes out, of the teams that have 3 games remaining, okay? Bucks and Magic play tonight. Cavs play the Grizz tonight. Heat are playing the Mavericks tonight. The only one that is tomorrow is the Knicks and the Celtics. So going into our game on Friday, everybody will have played the same amount of games on this list, and then you're going to have Magic and Sixers in action on Friday. We're at the Cavs. Then who else is on here? Trying to see. Heat play on Friday. Toronto. The New York Knicks play Friday on a back-to-back, and then the Bucks are playing on Friday. So basically everybody's in action on Friday.
Standings watch will be a Friday. Will be on League Pass. They have a new thing called NBA Crunch Time, where you can it's like the NFL Red Zone, basically.
I didn't even know that.
It's a similar idea.
Nice.
And we were watching it last night, which also had a lot of games with implications on it. So that'll be a night to watch, our game. Obviously, that's a huge game because the Cleveland implications, if you beat them, you have the tiebreak, you pass them in the standings, but it'll be a fun night in the NBA cross. There's a lot, just even in the Western Conference, of things that still have to work out. So most teams outside of really Boston have a lot to play for, at least win a couple games. So it'll be really fun to watch Friday and Sunday. And then hopefully, we're talking about maybe doing a few more podcasts come playoff time. And hopefully we're not in the play-in game the next time we speak. But the Sixers are right there, so it's going to be fun. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Like Ryan said, we're gonna ramp up here to close out the season, and hopefully it's a long close to the season. Worst case, and after Friday, who knows? We could be looking at a play-in scenario, and we'll go through all that if that comes to pass. But hopefully we lock in one of those top 6 seeds. We'll know our matchup by Sunday, which is awesome. And then the play-in tournament will be the 16th to the 19th, and I believe that NBA Saturday on the 20th kicks off the playoffs. So we'll probably come at you with a couple episodes between now and then certainly stay close to the playoff series when that does kick off. Appreciate you guys listening, and we'll talk at you soon.